Thank you, Joey, and welcome to the work session for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for November the 8th, 2022. This meeting is called to order. I'm going to call the roll. Alderman Barnhill.
Present.
Vice Mayor Blanton.
Here.
Alderman Hanson.
Here.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
Alderman Berger.
Here.
Alderman Brown.
Present.
Alderman Potts.
Present.
And Alderman Baggett.
Present.
And the mayor's here also, so everybody's in attendance tonight. The next item on the agenda is an opportunity for citizens to make comments for items that are not on the agenda. And I have no speaker cards that reference that, so unless somebody rushes up immediately, we're going to move on to the Franklin Tree Commission annual update, which Vice Mayor Blanton serves as the representative from the board. And
So, thank you. I always think about Miss Ann when I'm doing anything in this capacity because she was the chairman of the tree commission before 11 years ago when I took this role. So, yes, ma'am. So we are here to give an annual report. I know the mayor appointed all of our subcommittees and different groups within the city to kind of report annually. So I'm going to let Paige and I volley back and forth. This is Paige. She's our, as you know, our assistant parks director. So go ahead, Paige.
All right, good evening. First thing we want to just talk about, if you'll look at the members, obviously Brandy Blanton is our alderman and our chair. Kim Hoover at large, Beth Adams at large, Jenny Williamson, Planning Commission, Justin Stelter, Green Industry Professional, Michael Johnson, Electrical Utility. And yes, we do have one vacancy that also will be asking for approval in the upcoming BOMA meeting as well. The Tree Commission has voted and approved, so we will be recommending that to BOMA as well.
And it will add another green industry professional to the mix.
Absolutely.
We meet every other month on the fourth Monday. We don't always have a lot of business to discuss, but I will say we're a small but mighty group and we get the job done.
Correct. And then we also have Arbor Day celebration. Got a little bit off with COVID, but we're trying to get back on a normal schedule, and that's usually in April. You'll be seeing that date come out as far as our other programming activities, so you'll see that date. Tree City USA, we've been, for 16 years we've held that. Advertising on tree planting projects, 100 trees in the parks and Main Street reconfiguration. So you'll hear more about that in future. And we're discussing that more and more in our tree commission as far as trees in the future and just how to improve what processes that we have.
So basically, to be considered a Tree City USA, you have to host an Arbor Day. And that typically happens in April. It typically happens at Pinkerton Park. COVID definitely threw a wrench in that. But we've had rain, we've had snow, we've had sunny days. But we've got a great team together, and we're talking about, Paige gave us some ideas for amping that up. And definitely want people to look out for that opportunity moving forward.
We will keep that at Pinkerton, but we, like Brandy said, are looking to grow that program and add some things to it. So that's the plan for '23. As far as outlook, some of the things we also discussed in the last meetings was developing education campaign in schools. One of the things we really want to push, just an example of that would be our new partnership with FSSD and how we can develop and, that program more about trees and at that education level that we don't have currently. So we want to do that, not just with FSSD, but any other schools that might be potentially interested in doing that. We want to do more workshops and lecture series. We have done lecture series, and we do those usually. Obviously, COVID has affected some of that, but some of the things we want to do is more tree planting days, more opportunities across the board. Some might be Saturdays, some might be during the week, but just more opportunities for the public, for volunteers, and Tree Commission to be involved in those. And then one of the other big things that we think we could improve on is as far as other, just social media in general, just trying to amp that up, and whether it's TikTok videos, whether it's Facebook, and just getting the word out more. We do advertise, and just an example for Arbor Day and some of our things, but we want to continue to grow that. And social media is a big part of that, so. Any questions?
great report. Thank you. Appreciate y'all bringing us.
I do have one question.
If there are some trees lacking in neighborhoods or in places that used to have trees and don't have trees, can somebody ask the city to come plant a tree along a right-of-way, maybe between the curb and the sidewalk of a street?
We definitely take care of the right-of-ways and city property. There was a really big tree planting, I don't know if y'all remember, on Royal Oaks within the last couple of years, in the median going through there.
Right.
We do have our own tree bank, so we have the opportunity. Some of those are not really grown to where they're transplantable yet. But when it comes to neighborhoods, a lot of HOAs handle that themselves. If we start getting into HOAs and
talking
things
about
that's
that.
private property, it opens up Pandora's box for us to do that.
I'm not talking about HOAs, I'm talking about between the curb and sidewalk along our arterials around.
Oh, absolutely.
Different
And
roads.
we've updated that.
Can we submit to you to go plant a tree? Because I've noticed a few trees missing and have never been planted back.
Sure, if there's ever an area that you'd like for that, or we've had citizens come to us and say, hey, this was in the right-of-way, we really missed that, then we can replant that. That's not an issue. That's where the tree funds come into play.
Okay, so if the alderman, the ward alderman, or at-large alderman see trees missing around town that are like not in an area that's normally taken care of by a masters association or an HOA or something, okay. thanks.
Absolutely.
One of the
Yeah.
other things, just to
That's
note,
what I wanna know.
we updated that policy related
I
to
thought-
street trees in the last few years, and we would just look at compliance with that, because some of the ways we planted trees a while back, a couple decades ago, is not the way we do it now
Right.
in terms of the types of trees and
Oh,
maybe
yeah,
the
things
exact
happen.
location. So we would just look to update it with the current
Yeah.
policy
No
in
more
terms of type of tree
sycamores.
and location.
No
Well,
more
and that's the
sycamores,
great
no more
thing,
maples.
Bev, because of having our urban forestry specialties people, Justin Stelter, who's
Yeah.
not on this list, I just realized, he is, you said it.
Yeah,
Justin.
he is.
Justin has that knowledge of
Yeah.
historical or original trees to this area.
Yeah.
And we had a list at our last meeting talking about different trees that were gonna be planted in our
Yeah.
property,
Yeah.
cities. And he was like, I don't think we need this, I think we need
Yeah.
this.
Well,
So that's where they come in and really help kind of forecast what looks good today may not be great in even 10 years, just because of the way it grows or its roots or what have
I've
you.
noticed there's some old dying sycamores and a few other things that should never be out here. And the maples that disrupt our sidewalks, and then the sweet gum trees, which make a mess. So sometimes those need to come down. Would we be willing to maybe take down a tree too and replant something if it looks like it's dying and diseased or, okay. All
Absolutely.
right, thanks.
And just keep in mind, tree planting season is not all year round. So if it doesn't happen immediately, it's not because it's not on the list.
Okey-doke, let's do the development activity report. Catherine?
Well, hello. Good evening, everyone. It's that time again for your quarterly development activity report. This one is your third quarter. So this is going to be just like the first one. Your first quarter and third quarter reports tend to be a bit shorter. This will just be an update on where we're at. This presentation will really be in two parts. The first one will just be the third quarter, so from July 1st to September 30th. And then I'll give you a year-to-date update, so everything from January 1st all the way to September 30th. Just show you where we're at so far this calendar year. And then after the first of the year, I'll be back with a fourth quarter and full year review. That'll be the most extensive presentation. I really hope to broaden this and give you a full picture, because what I have here is mostly centered in our Building and Neighborhood Services Department with permitting and fee collections. But that is so much more than what our development process. So I hope to bring you all in the next quarter, something that touches every aspect of our development process, spanning everything from BNS to planning, engineering, and hopefully even fire. But we'll start off right now with the third quarter activity. This is very similar to what you've seen before. It is a chart with the number of permits we've issued in the last 3 months, the fees we've collected, and the construction value of the permits that we've issued. In the last 3 months, we've issued 1,447 permits. That's very consistent where we are in the third quarter in the last 5 years. This is typically our slower season, so we don't issue as many permits in the third quarter typically as the rest of the year. Permit fees, we've collected so far a little over $600,000, which is pretty level with where we were in the third quarter last year. But the construction value always surprises me when I look at that. The value of the permits that we've issued is close to $240 million. That's almost a 50% increase from the third quarter last year. And then in the previous presentations, I've been giving you kind of our additional fees. What I did was I broke it out to our 3 biggest impact fees to really show you the different collections, different types of impact fee collections that we're doing this year. So with road impact, in the last 3 months, we have collected about $1.4 million. Water and sewer, it's close to $800,000. And in facilities, that's close to about $500,000. And I know you all know this, but for the people watching at home, with impact, it is entirely dependent upon the types of development that we get through. So there's a myriad of factors that come into play when we determine impact fees. And it's always by the use, it could be by the level of demand. It just varies. And so that's why a lot of your numbers aren't going to be very linear. And with that, I want to move towards our 2022 year-to-date numbers. So this is everything from January 1st through September 30th. So far, we've issued about 4,471 permits. That's a permit fee collection of a little over $1.6 million. And construction valuation, again, up by a little over 50% at $542 million. And with our number of permits, it's about like a 2% decrease, so I would say pretty level. And obviously, you can see with permit fees, pretty level with where we were at this time last year. And then same thing with our impact fee collections. You'll see this is very similar than the third quarter. Kind of the same story as just the third quarter. With road impact, so far we've collected about $3.1 million. Water and sewer, $2.1 million, and facilities, almost $1.5 million. These are all about 25 to 30% decreases from where we were at last year, but I do want to give a little caveat to that. Typically what happens is impact fees are paid at the time of building permit application. However, that doesn't always happen. So like I said earlier, it depends on the use. So there are some times when we have developments come through, they apply for a foundation permit. They just want to get a permit, and then they'll apply for the building permit later. When they apply for a foundation permit, we collect fees at that point in time. So there are an example, for example, McEwen Northside. We issued them a foundation permit at the end of 2021. So their road impact fees, even though they issued a building permit in 2022, their road impact, water and sewer and facilities were actually recorded in 2021. So just an example, and you'll see in the next slide with our dwelling units how sometimes those numbers get skewed. We'll have a lot of new dwelling units added, but it's not necessarily reflected in our impact fee numbers. And so here you'll see we've added quite a bit of new dwelling units this year so far. As you can see, so far in 2022, we've issued permits for 170 new single-family homes, 522 new multifamily dwelling units, and 125 new townhomes. So you can see there's a pretty significant increase from where we've been in the last 5 years. Really, to wrap this all up, I know everybody is, there's a lot of unknowns with the economy right now and how that might affect development activity. What I can tell you is right now, we're not seeing that, and we likely won't see it until the future. But I am constantly monitoring this. I wanted to show up here. There's a link to our development and building services page on our website where you have access to the development activity reports. I update them monthly and quarterly, and so I try to stay on top of this as much as possible. So I will continue tracking this, and I will continue to provide you all with updates as much as possible.
Go ahead, Alderman Hanson.
So Catherine, for the public's understanding, when you talk about the construction value, we're talking about the current inflation rate causing it to be, say, $542 million versus last year's number of $352 million. Is that correct?
I would
Or are we
not-
talking about a larger scale product?
So I would not say that it is entirely inflation, but I can't look at you all and say that inflation doesn't play a factor. It is simply the value of the construction and the permits that we issue. So there are some times that we have developments come through that are very high value, that are millions and millions of dollars. And there's sometimes that we get a lot of permits that are not that high. So what I can tell you is I'm not going to tell you that inflation's not a factor, but there's a multitude of factors that
It's
go
not the
into
only
that.
factor.
Yes.
Yeah.
And on this same line of conversation, item 14 that we have tonight on our agenda, I'm going to respectfully request that we pull this from work session and have a special session dedicated only to this, and bring in some of the stakeholders, dig a little deeper in this, and make sure that we have exhausted every possible means from a governmental side, from a private-public partnership side, from a legislative side, before we make any final decisions. I know we have been trying to rush this to the table and get it done this year. I am not at all comfortable with that. I think the stakeholders, based on all the phone calls I'm getting, are not comfortable with it, and I think that this has not been completely vetted. I think it's a great start, but I don't think we're ready to make any decisions on something this significant, and I just respectfully request that we could move this to its own special session at a different time with the stakeholders and really talk through this, because this is a direct correlation with what she's brought to the table tonight, and it could affect our quality of life in Franklin, the lifestyle that we're offering to people, and our developers' abilities to continue to develop things that attract and keep people in Franklin. That's all I have.
Any other questions? Item 3 is ordinance 2022-38, an ordinance to rezone 7.0 acres from agriculture district to residential R2 district for property located east of Hillsborough Road and north and south of Poteet Place, establishing a public hearing on December the 13th, 2022. Joey?
Thank you, and good early evening. Yes, this is for a rezoning request from agricultural to R2 zoning. The request does meet the recommendations of Envision Franklin, and R2 corresponds to the existing zoning for Monticello and the established surrounding residential subdivision to the east. And it is supported by staff as well as Planning Commission.
Any questions?
I guess I had mentioned maybe the other time that some of this is in the floodplain, but that's still available for, I mean, there's much of it that's not, that's still available for building.
Okay, thank you. Good report. Item 4 is ordinance 2022-19, an ordinance to rezone 7.9 acres from Civic Institutional District to Residential R4 District for the property located south of Battle Avenue and west of Cannon Street at 1406 Cannon Street and 319, 401, 403, and 405 Battle Avenue, establishing a public hearing next year, January 10th, 2023.
Thank you. You have heard this rezoning item before. There were some public notification issues that required it to go back to Planning Commission, and now it's back before you today. Staff's comments have not changed. We are still in support of the rezoning to R4. Envision Franklin places this in the historic residential design concept, and R4 also corresponds with everything, all the residential zoning around this property. R4, as a reminder, is very contextual-based zoning district in terms of its minimums. It must meet an average of what is established around it, with no less than new lots being 6,500 square feet. Also, this is in the Central Franklin overlay, which does require additional requirements in terms of building shape, form, height, and all new residential lots are required to front onto a public road. So staff does recommend approval, and as did Planning Commission after a split vote. Happy to answer any questions.
And we do have David Esslinger and Greg Gamble that do want to make some comments, and I'll give them a couple of minutes to make comments. If you'd like to go ahead, and then I'll turn it back to the board if that's satisfactory.
Some paperwork.
Sure, why don't you do that while David's doing his work?
Well, we're grateful to be able to come back before you all this evening to revisit this. Just in a quick summary, the FSSD board began conversations about the repurposing of our central office annex property about 4 years ago. It was quickly determined that the central office annex building did not meet the board's standards, it did not meet the current needs, and would require, at the time, approximately $13 million to bring the building up to our standards and to current codes. On May 9th of 2022, the FSSD board declared the central office annex property surplus with the intent to sell the property. The proceeds from this sale will reduce the amount of bond funds that we'll need to sell and the indebtedness that we'll be involved with for the future, for our current projects and our future projects. And the additional tax revenue generated from the residential development would benefit all current FSSD taxpayers for years to come. FSSD board believes that rezoning the property to R4 prior to its sale is in the best interest of the FSSD and the larger community, assuring something contextual goes in the space, as well as providing FSSD with additional residual income for years to come, as the development of single-family homes will increase the FSSD tax rate. Therefore, we're respectfully asking the board to accept the recommendation of the Franklin Planning Department and the elected board members of the Franklin Special School District, and approve that property to be rezoned from CI to R4.
Hi, I'm Greg Gamble, landscape architect and land planner, working with FSSD on this rezoning. I promised Mayor Moore that it'd be 2 minutes, and I'm going to stick to that. I just want to give you a very quick overview as to what this request is for. As Joey mentioned, the R4 district is very unique. It's not like any of the other districts in your zoning ordinance, and so you need to be aware of that and need to understand how context specific it is. The first page that you have here is Envision Franklin. The policy in Envision Franklin is for historic residential, and it's about context. It's about being respectful to what is around you. And so we look at the zoning district and the zoning map. Everything that you're seeing here in orange is existing R4 today. So what we're asking for is for this property that FSSD owns to be just like its neighbors, to be R4 base district. And so what is the R4 base district? If you'll flip a couple of pages, I've given you the excerpt out of the zoning ordinance that specifically describes what this R4 district is. And it states the R4 district is intended to preserve these established historic residential neighborhoods throughout central Franklin and ensure contextual compatibility of infill development. And that's exactly what is being proposed here. So what does that mean? It means that the lot sizes must be 75% of the adjacent lot size, that the lot width must be 75% or more of the adjacent lot size, that the front lot lines must be contextual with the existing homes on the same block face. So it addresses setbacks, it addresses heights. You cannot be more than 1/2 story above your adjacent neighbor. This whole district is written for compatibility and context. If you flip then one more page, you can see here the property centered in the middle. This is the 7.9 acre property that the FSSD would like rezoned. There are 5 properties right now that are, exist here, 4 of them front onto Battle Avenue. If you look at other areas here that are approximately 7.9 acres, you can see they range from 21 lots to 26 lots. So it's about being contextual. It's about what is around this block that informs lot size, So yes, it has a minimum of 6,000 square feet, but the lots that are in context to this property are greater than 6,000 square feet. So I wanted to give you a sense of what those densities might be. So we're looking at somewhere around 2.5, maybe to 3 at most homes per acre. But again, it's the same density, scale, size as the adjacent neighbors. There were some concerns by the community about losing some open space that they would otherwise have as a park that's a part of this property. For one, open space requirements do carry forward with new subdivisions. All stormwater elements need to be addressed in future development as well. So those are two things that create open space that are not accounted for on the densities I showed you earlier. But Franklin Special School District has 2 areas. One's a recreation field that's about 3 acres. One is a playground area that's about 2.24. That area is open to the neighborhood to use when school's not in. So after school hours, on the weekends, it is made available, and it is in immediate proximity to this
Would you
property.
give those numbers again, please?
Sure. The open field is about 3 acres in size. The playground area is 2.24. And we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Go ahead, Alderman Hanson.
Just full of questions tonight. Talk to me about your capacity in your Franklin special classrooms right now.
We have capacity at almost every school
So you're
in our
not
district.
overflowing in
No,
any of
ma'am.
your schools? Okay.
Not any of our schools.
And you've done everything in your power to sell this to another institution who could offer our community a school facility, since most of our schools are over capacity? Or no? You just want the R4 zoning?
Correct.
And you have not tried selling it?
No, it's not on the market. It has not been on the market, and we can't sell it off market.
But you could sell it on market?
We could say, yeah, that's our goal, is to rezone it to R4 and then put it on market.
But you specifically don't want another school going in that location, is that right?
We specifically want the residual income that comes with residential housing. That would have a long-range effect on our district, to rezone it and have additional housing there where we will have residual income for years to come.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Alderman Berger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I was really concerned too, because I know that there's a couple of schools that really wanted to look at this and might consider this. But after doing a little homework on it, I think the expense to buy that place and bring it up to codes, but also bring it up to health standards.
Correct.
Believe that there's asbestos in this?
Yes, ma'am.
possibly?
There's asbestos encapsulated, so
All
let's be
right.
clear.
Right, encapsulated. I will
It's
say that.
non-fibrous, it's encapsulated asbestos throughout the building. The roof is, you could take a shower in several rooms during a rainy day.
Oh, sir, like City Hall?
The roof
Put
is
that plug
in
in.
terrible
Just like City
shape.
Hall.
And we temporarily have our transportation department there now while our central office complex is being built on Eddy Lane. So they're in the
Yeah, I saw
front,
that.
they're in the front where the roof is halfway good. The back part, where Mac used to be, the roof is in terrible shape.
So I talked to a few of them, and I said, do you really want to get into that? Because you're talking a major expense, probably
is.
much more than if you bought a greenfield at this point, possibly. So,
And we vetted that years ago.
yeah,
Uh,
it doesn't seem possible, it doesn't seem probable, it doesn't seem realistic to expect that, because I was really concerned about that, because it might be a building that others could really use. But with all the problems you have there, I think the expense just wipes that off the map for most of the people with the schools that would want to look at it. And then the open space you're talking about in the neighborhood, it's not for public use. That would, for homes go there, that open space won't be for public use, but around the neighborhood. But you did mention the playground and the rec field, so that's helpful. So this is my,
Alderman Baggett.
This is in the newly drawn Ward 4. So, and I have spoken with a lot of the neighbors, and mixed bag of a lot of folks understand what CI can bring to the neighborhood, and so done a lot of looking into this and went into the Vision Franklin. I think it's important for the public to know that we really don't get to sit up here willy-nilly and just decide on what we want or desire for properties. We have a land use plan, and some on this board have, if you want to go back and read or listen to some of our prior meetings where we have said that our land use plan is linked to our zoning ordinance in a way that kind of, some would say limits us. I've made arguments to the other side before. So now you have that on video now, Matt, so you can bring that back. But there is some flexibility, right? But at the same time, we voted in the past because they are linked. And here, I'll read this, that infill is encouraged in established areas where existing character of neighborhood is desired to be preserved. These areas include neighborhoods, civic uses should be at the major intersections of arterial and collector streets. Joey, is it a major, and this is a true question, I don't believe it's at a major intersection of arterial and collector streets.
I would leave that to the engineers to label.
Can someone,
and establish.
it wasn't a rhetorical, I really don't know if that's at the intersection.
I would not classify it as a major intersection.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. So our land use plan says, hey, that's not the best place for civic institutional. And in fact, it says that contextual neighborhood is to be preserved. That being said, I too would love to have more facilities for schools. And I look forward to hearing the public comment, because that's what we're doing here, is just setting a public meeting. And it's going to be really important for the public to show up and speak on this because, for obvious reasons. But, I think there's a lot of risk in just leaving it CI. Of all the different uses, so that's where I sit right now. But then I would ask staff, we don't have a plan in front of us, but Vision Franklin also says public active and passive recreation are encouraged. Institutional uses in public parks serve as active and passive, and these should be preserved as well. So there's a balance there too. Doesn't mean we should land grab and make public parks, but I think we don't have a development plan for this rezoning. So we can't see exactly what's going to be there. It's going to be hard for the public to digest. So any more guidance from staff, if you could give us what that would look like, if we would have some kind of approval process for a site plan. I know we wouldn't, but planning would. But Envision Franklin's pretty clear about preserving passive and active recreation, and there is still some in the area, point taken. But that was a concern of the neighbors, and I felt like I needed to vocalize it. Thank you.
Alderman Barnhill.
How long has that not been used as a school? 25 years? Not as a school.
Well, I've been in the district for 24 years. It's been used that, it was built in 52.
Okay.
Lower campus, central office annex, what we call it, used to be Franklin, the elementary school in the
Right.
day. It was built in 52.
That building was, I guess, K through 5, and then you went 6, 7, 8, and 9 to someplace
Our
else. Pretty
district's-
close.
It's something like that, but our districts had several configurations of school. At one point, it was just K2, I believe.
Yeah.
If you want to,
Johnson was 3-4.
Yes,
And
correct.
then you went to what is now Franklin
old-
Elementary for fifth
for
and
the
sixth.
the old
And right.
junior high.
My-
I'll tell you where you could.
My
if-
point is this, when somebody wants to say, we need this for school capacity, that's not,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
That's
to answer
not-
your question, it
that's
hasn't
not-
been a
that-
school for years.
Right.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your
Yeah.
question. It hasn't, we had our MAC offices
had the
in
MAC
there,
program in there.
and that was it. We haven't had children in that building
20
20 years.
plus.
You did in the MAC building that was adjacent to it.
Early before school and after school, but not
And summer
instructionally, in summer MAC, right. And
And that
we
wasn't
got,
that was.
that's 2
But
years
that
ago.
that was not the oldest part of the building.
That is correct.
Where
yeah.
you go around the hallways, the classrooms to the side,
And-
and whatever.
They got out, but they got out just in time.
Yes.
It's just they're now at Freedom Middle School, at a wing at Freedom Middle School. So WEMAC was over there, and our morning and afternoon care program was over there, and now both those programs are at Freedom Middle School. Summer Mac's at Johnson.
And the other question, as far as capacity is concerned, do you know how many students you've had, how many students are going to Franklin Special School District this year, last year, year before last?
Yes, sir. 3,194.
Okay?
And pre-COVID, we were right at 3,400. So we're an increase over last year by about 150 students. So we're increasing each year, although almost every school district across the state, for some reason, showed a drop in student numbers during COVID and then the year following COVID. We have shown an uptick in our district, and we're looking forward to getting back to our 3,500 student capacity. Well, not our student count, but that was pre-COVID.
Because several years ago, you were up around 3,700.
Correct, yes, sir. And even then, we were not at capacity.
Not the capacity there, is correct.
We have plenty of room to grow in our schools.
Alderman Peterson.
To go back to one of the things that you just showed us now, would when you talked about the contextual density, you know, R4 says it has to be similar to the areas around it, but it says it has to be at least like 6,000 something square feet of the lot, but you're really looking more here at maybe these other examples, and that's not back up here right now, but they would be three units to the acre or even less, because the ones around that, I went through and looked, most of them are 4/10 of an acre.
That's right.
And very few of them are, I think even the smaller ones are like 1/4 of an acre.
And Joey can correct me, but the way I interpret the ordinance here is that the planning commission has to be the judge to determine, are you contextual?
And so whenever that does, that would come to the planning commission, then that would be looked at and not expected to be a lot
Very
of,
unique to the district.
but not be a lot of little 6,000 or 7,000 square foot lots.
That's how I read it.
Everybody good?
Thank you all so much.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you for
you.
your time. Appreciate you.
All right, we're going to go to item 5 and 6 kind of together, if we could, Joey. Will that work for you? One's a rezoning of 301.89 acres, and the other's development plan for a property we all know, 1,500 Legends Club Lane, the Legends Golf Club. And so, go ahead.
Thank you. This rezoning and revision to the PUD development plan is to establish entitlements for the Legends Club Golf Course and to accommodate the additions they are proposing to 2 of the existing buildings on the site, specifically the main clubhouse as well as the training facility. There is a 1 MOS, modification or standard request, for roof form, and that is to accommodate the already existing pitched roof form for commercial buildings. Currently, that's not permitted within the zoning ordinance. Staff is supportive of both the MOS as well as the plan overall, as is Planning Commission. So happy to answer any questions.
So big investment means that the golf course is staying. Squash the rumors.
Mayor, I'd like to point out that there's a gentleman with an Auburn shirt on, and there's at least 2 of us in the room. So.
We have some anti-nausea medicine back up there. Is that what you're bringing up? No, we love Auburn.
I think those 2 words are War Eagle.
I do know we have Josh Denton. Josh is representing Vanderbilt, if you have any questions for him. But are there any questions for Joey? Everybody good? Okay, thank you. Thank you. War Eagle, thanks for coming.
It's a Vanderbilt course, I'm just being clear. Okay.
How about item 7, which is Resolution 2022-66, amending the Carruthers Glen PUD subdivision to extend the vesting rights for the property located at 4338 and 4340 South Carruthers Road. It's a 2-year extension on the vesting rights. Is there any question about that one?
There was only one thing I wanted to say.
Sure, go ahead.
Whenever I look back at that, I just wanted to make sure that part of that is right next to Cross Creek. in the county, and there would not be any road connection. This doesn't really show any, I don't think.
Correct. That is correct.
There's no road connection to.
There
the
is
county
not.
road.
Talked to that at length.
That was specifically addressed in that development.
Thank you.
Ad infinitum. Did you want to say anything else, Chelsea, or anything, anybody else have a question for? Well, how about going to item number 8 then, which is Resolution 2022-77, resolution for obtaining guidance from the Franklin Board of Mayor and Aldermen on mitigating the impact of vehicular traffic on failing intersections located in the proposed vicinity of the proposed Optima development in Cool Springs.
I'll just say a couple introductory comments and turn it over to Vernon. What we've done here is tried to translate the options that you've talked about the last 2 meetings. We spent pretty extensive time talking about this project and the traffic impacts. You'll recognize those first 4 options. Staff did try to think through this a little more and some of the discussion we've had and also looking at the traffic impact analysis a little more too, and did develop a 5th option that we put out here just for further consideration. I say that though to staff is still recommending that you adopt option 4 that we've discussed before, which provides for those recommended improvements and provides for the city to contribute through impact fees those costs beyond what the developer is responsible for. So I'll have Vernon talk through this a little bit more, and then we're glad to discuss it with you. But this item is on the 7 o'clock meeting for your vote and further discussion there. But we did want to have it here for any clarification and discussion before we have it on your voting meeting tonight as well. So, Vernon.
Thank you, Eric, and good evening, Mayor and Alderman. There's really not much more to add after the discussion we've had. We've tried to lay out various options, and as Eric has mentioned, based on the conversations we've had, we added another alternative for you to consider or option. We want to Paul Olson and Adam, Jimmy, myself drafted a memorandum that has been put in your packet and shared with you that further articulates the staff recommendation that's predicated largely on our traffic impact analysis guidelines and the information we've received. As I mentioned in the previous couple meetings that shouldn't be taken lightly, I hope, is that the reason I'm here is because, Jimmy, Paul, Adam, in working with the developer, couldn't reach an agreement, which happens the vast majority of the time. And we've had a lot of discussion, and we feel strongly that this intersection warrants serious consideration of the board using unallocated road impact fees in the tune of about 1.7 to help get this intersection at least mitigated with the potential and the impact of this development. Another thing, and you heard from Catherine that tracks development activity and permits, and we had been talking, we also tracked time to market. And had the developer substantially concurred with staff recommendation, they'd gotten through the approval process, they'd be on the cusp of getting site plan approval by now and hopefully getting a grading permit and starting work. And that translates into time and money as well. And we monitor that closely. So option 5 comes from the standpoint and some of the discussion, and we shared this with Scotty and Cameron, is that to put a cap, if the Board of Mayor and Aldermen decides that the city should proceed with making these improvements to the intersection, to allow the multifamily units, 343, and the 100 Key Hotel to proceed, or 348 multifamily units and 130 Key Hotel to proceed, could always get permitted and occupied, and then the retail space would be capped until the improvements were completed. And that's essentially what option number 5 states.
With who manning the project, us or them?
Well, with number 5, it would be the city.
Thank you.
Yes. So in other words, they would not have control over completing the entirety of the development as they have proposed.
This is kind of like this, what the city did with West Haven
Yeah.
and the completion of the Mac Hatcher extension. You said you can build so much,
Yep.
but you can only do so much until that infrastructure is upgraded to match the larger development. So this is sort of taking that same approach to this development as an alternative, as another idea. Again, staff is still recommending option 4, feel that that delivers the improvements that we need most timely and most cost effectively, so much so that we're willing to put $1.7 million of impact fees to make it happen, help it happen. So, but 5 gives you another approach.
So you drew the unlucky lottery number because we just approved 2 developments down the road from you, and yet we're gonna let them go ahead and do full development. But if we pick number 5, you lose. Not them, you lose, because you picked the unlucky number. You got 3rd in line. You got the bronze medal, not the silver, not the gold. And somehow that just doesn't sit right with me. I want this intersection done. And I'm not so sure that that's the right thing to do. In fact, it doesn't sit right with me at all. I mean, if there's nobody else doing anything and you just came in and there wasn't anything else that we just approved, but we never said boo to them. We never said, hey, you're affecting this intersection, you're affecting this traffic. Yeah, you're affecting it, but you're going to improve what's right out front of you. But now, with the unlucky number, you have to, the city's asking you. And whether you're there or not, we have a failing intersection, whether you're there or not. And, well, this board needs to be putting it on our CIP, and we probably need to be moving it up. And we probably need to be addressing it, because guess what? It's not on the corner of our city, stuck in a little corner up yonder somewhere. It's smack dab in the middle of Cool Springs Boulevard with all the stuff that goes on there. So this board, I don't know what you all are thinking, but I don't like number 5 because of that reason. I think it's just not right. It's just totally unfair to just say, okay, you didn't get in the door fast enough, so you get the ticket, and you have to fess up with this stuff, with the money, and you have to manage it and do all that. And then along with that comes mitigating the utilities and right-of-way and all those things, which I think, in the reasoning I had before, is I thought maybe you guys could get it done faster. But then when I went back and reevaluated, I thought, no, I don't think you will, because we have to jump through all those hoops, and so will you, and then you're doing this development. So I don't know what the true answer is here. I just feel that, and I think and I believe that we have to have something better than this, and I don't really think that they need to be managing it. I think the city needs to be managing this. And I think that we were able to come to some better conclusion. And then we talked about, we talked about some things about, if we pick number 5, would they be doing the medium closures? Would they be doing the right turn in and out? Would they be doing the medium closure at Mission Court and Gateway? Would they be doing the left turn lane? Would they be doing all of those still?
They have agreed to do those improvements, and the right-of-way would be eligible for offset reimbursement. And
With number
yes,
5.
they would, with number 5, they would proceed with those, because the intent is eventually they're going to complete their project.
Well, yeah, maybe, who knows?
Now, if they didn't want to do it based on if they didn't want to do all of the work at the time, if number 5 was selected, we can certainly look at phasing those improvements too, which would mean that whenever the city, if we decided to complete the work at Mallory and Cool Springs, that then, as they proceeded with the retail portion, that they would go back in the intersection and disrupt it and make the remaining improvements. So there's any number of ways that we as staff are happy to help facilitate this investment in their community. What we need is direction.
And then-
And there's multiple options across the board from them doing and funding the work to not doing anything to everything in between,
And-
which is our recommendation to consider. And there's only been a couple other projects that the board has put funds from unallocated road impact fees towards projects. So it doesn't come lightly from staff to make this type of investment. But as you pointed out, Alderman Berger and everybody else, this is a pretty important intersection.
Well, it is with or without these people, regardless. We can't say, okay, if you go away and you don't develop there, are we just going to sit on this intersection and not address it? I think that's a bad thing to do. I think that is our responsibility to still address it. The other thing is, they were willing to put more money in there, and we said, oh, no, 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 we can't take their money. We can only take the road impact fees. But I went back in here, and the transportation impact analysis says, in addition to requiring dedication of right-of-way, the city engineer and their designees shall require an applicant to construct or fund all or a portion of the system improvements required to mitigate the traffic impacts of a proposed development proportionate to the traffic impacts of a proposed development. Well, that or says they can fund it. I don't see why we can't take the money. Why can't we take the additional money? I
Wait,
don't
I-
understand that legally,
Want me
if we
to-
cannot take that
Yeah,
money.
what,
don't think that's how the
what I
ordinance
brought up previously
This is
is
fine.
that avoiding this type of conversation is not good to encourage timely investment, and we're getting into negotiation. Now, they have offered $36,000 in lieu of taking $1.7 million from the city to make the improvement. I'll just leave it at that.
Well,
Offered an additional $36,000 beyond, above their arterial road impact fees
36?
for the city to do the, have you proceed with this. Now, we don't have that codified in our ordinance.
I
We'd
think
like
it's
to
more than
have
that.
that codified in our ordinance, so we're not having these types of negotiations in a public setting.
So we do it back there.
No, we would
I'm-
codify
no,
it into the
it
municipal
belongs
code,
here.
into the road impact fee
Okay,
ordinance,
all
that
right.
it gives us this ability based on a
Doesn't sound
percentage
right.
of
It
the
just didn't
impact.
sound right.
There's merit to some extent to what that proposal is, but we should have it codified so it's not
It's in the
arbitrary,
ordinance, yeah.
that it's clear.
Okay,
Just
okay.
like we collect arterial and collector road
All right.
impact fees.
Yes, and I think.
You'll get your chance in a minute.
And I just think that, there's a way to do this, and I don't think it's sitting here negotiating and saying, what do you give us for that? What do you give me for that? What do you trade me for that? I don't think that is what we're talking about. I think we're talking about what's the best and highest use here of doing this for road impact fees and funding. I just wanted to have that conversation, that's all. I wasn't trying to sit here and negotiate. I'm just saying, what is the best thing for us to do? So I'll be quiet.
Alderman Baggett.
Unfortunately, we've got a vote at 7 o'clock, so there's a bit of negotiation that is what we're doing. I mean, we don't want, this is not ideal, and we've talked about that this is a unique experience. Make sure, I'm gonna boil this down. With option 4, everyone's good with the funds, with the fees. I mean, I know you're not happy with them, but they are what they are. We're gonna put 1.7 in. We're putting our 1.7 in, and the fees as outlined here. 1.5 Arterial Road, offset 890, 676, these fees that are in the, everybody's good with that money. Everybody's good with that money.
Yep.
All right, we're 1.7.
Yeah, we're
Yep, we're
going
good
to
with that.
validate those further.
Right,
in
right,
the
just,
draft.
That's our best estimate.
That's our best estimate.
directionally accurate,
Right.
who's paying for what. So really, all this is kind of superfluous, because it's who's gonna do it. Just, that's it. We just need to decide as a board, who's gonna do it, and let's move on, because we got a long agenda. But I mean, am I right? I mean, we can talk about all the rest, I mean, we all know that the intersection needs to be fixed. So who's gonna do the work?
Alderman Brown.
It does. We're all good on the numbers.
You don't spend when we're done, ever?
Right. I literally asked that question at the last discussion. 'Cause I thought that was the case. I thought the money was the same, and the only question was who was going to manage the work.
And I was told the money wasn't the same. So I totally agree with you. That is what I understood about number 4.
Depending on the timing of when you do the improvements, the numbers may not be the same.
But I understand, the spirit
just that
of what we're
qualification.
saying here,
Yeah.
that is the
Right.
formula. And this really was a question, I totally get that, but the question really was, who was going to manage it? Which is why the only question I asked back was, do you want to control your own destiny, or do you want to put it in our hands? I think what I understand from you is you'd rather not touch it. I think as a group, I'm hearing people say we'd probably be better to manage it. And so it sounds like a 4, if the money is right, I think we're pretty decided on who ought to manage it. I think that becomes what we do at 7. My only question that's left on this thing is, does this get us a good, if we do this work, are we good on these intersections for the foreseeable future? Because these are not the last developments coming in. And I mean, the reality is there's gonna be more usage of some of the property that's sitting around Cool Springs, better usage. Some of those parking lots are gonna go away. And so I think we need to, I just don't wanna keep hitting this discussion. I just wanna know that we're gonna get it all done. And if this isn't enough to get it all done well, then I think we need to have another discussion about how we get this done. So.
I'm going to ask the board to let them speak.
Well, I just wanted to ask a question. You're
Okay,
saying that.
I'll let
No,
Alderman
just
Peterson
to ask
speak,
a
and then you
question,
can
this.
speak.
Here, are you saying that the difference between 4 and 5 is just whether we do it, whether we manage it?
5 would be, now the 5, it's not as simple as who does it. Because if you, it is the first question we got to answer is who's going to do it. And the second question is, do we let them, if we're going to do it, if we decide that we're going to do it, we then need to decide if we're going to hold back the commercial until they're complete. And I think it's a very valid question because we have failing intersections. Now, again, I think I've told y'all this. I wouldn't wait for us to do it. I mean, I know that you don't want to be managing it, but you're, again, control your own destiny. There are a lot of other capital projects that we have, and I foresee city staff being obviously very accommodating and getting this done in an expedited manner if it is our case. But the reality is that you would control your own destiny if you do it, like everyone else that comes before us that does. So.
Did you get your question in, Alderman Peterson?
I think so, in the sense that it's if the city manages it, though, it would have to be option 5. Is that it?
No, it could be 4 or 5. It could be 4 or 5. 5 would be that we would just hold back, that they couldn't do all the commercial
Okay.
until we completed the improvements.
And really, option 2 is
2 and 3.
putting it in the city's
Yeah, 2 and 3.
CIP.
Totally.
But they could still proceed with the development, the full
Yes.
development.
Yes.
And 2 and
yes.
3, 3 does it as well.
So,
To do any.
Okay. Please allow the developers
Thank
to
you.
speak
Thank
and
you.
introduce
So we
yourself.
still get the money with 2. We still get the money with 2, but we manage it. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Scotty Burnick. I'm a landscape architect with Reagan Smith. Appreciate your time and agree with Vernon. It's, generally these conversations are easier. I think you can understand the significant amount of infrastructure being requested, which made us pause and really study this further. In addition, I mean, as we talked about before, as we look at the overall, 10 other developments to 2031, we're 1.5% of this intersection. In regards to, contributing, yeah, we're not here to negotiate. What we would like to do in fairness and keep our word, when we come back before you, at second hearing with a contract, we can reduce the request of the offset that we get back for that 1.5%. I think the 1.5% sounds small when you just look at it there. We're still contributing and still doing that. We're not able to offset at our front intersection $1.8 million. Additionally, there's dollars going into it that could be offset. Some of those we said we could reduce to cover that or go back. So if you take the arterial impact fee that we're already paying and you put it towards the estimated $2.4 million improvement, including the I-65 on-ramp, we're 28%, like our proportional share, although we're only 1.5 of the impact, we're contributing 28% of that. You know, if we additionally reduce less of an offset agreement, that pushes us closer to probably 29.5%. So it's not a, I think we want to be here in support with the city, not trying to get around anything. It's obviously doing a major intersection right in front of us, then doing that one, trying to manage it, understand right-of-way acquisitions, unknown utilities, whatever you may get into. The cost that's decided tonight, you know, gets put into a resolution. There's a cap, so there's uncertainty how our client would get to proceed with that. Number two is the option where I think what I heard most of you speak about is perhaps it becomes a capital improvement project. There's no timing or phasing on this development, so it's simply, you know, to your point, who manages it. So I think, you know, lastly, we're here to answer questions. I know, Cameron, you may have a few thoughts on it, and by all means, let you speak.
Yeah, I'm Cameron Bean with Flournoy Development, and appreciate your time on this once again. We do, to Scotty's point, we feel like what's being requested in option 4 is that we're, for 1.5% impact, we're being asked to fund 28% and manage 100%, in addition to the work in front of our own intersection, which includes multiple safety improvements, you know, as well as the project access-based things that were bulleted in the memo. So option 2, to us, we've maintained from the beginning, is keeping more with the proportionality and the TIA guidelines, that option 2 involves us still contributing 28% and the additional 1.5 that we would contribute by reducing our offset, for a total of 29.5% of funding, right, which is there as an option, construct or fund. We could never find the proportional equivalent of constructing, right? It's always been construct it all or construct nothing. And to be, in addition to the work in front of our site, asked to construct, to fund 28% and manage 100%, we've maintained is not proportional, you know, to our impact down there. And so again, we're not asking to do nothing. That's not what we're asking. We're still funding 28% of those improvements, which we believe would satisfy more than satisfy our proportional share, you know, of the estimated cost of those improvements. And, you know, the only other thing I'd like to mention, we don't entirely understand, I mean, why option 2 makes the most sense to us is because it does allow us to develop and complete our development, because when the city prepared the mitigation, which was expressed by seconds of delay, you know, I've printed that slide from their presentation if you want me to pass it around. But it says that we're adding, by the year 2031, 6 seconds of delay. And right, I mean, that's 0.6 of a second per year to the overall intersection. Now, on certain turning movements, the maximum would be 20.5 seconds, but that's by 2031. And so to hold up the commercial, or to, you know, to require a phasing over 0.6 of a second of delay, we don't understand that concept, you know, necessarily. I mean, we feel like the 28% funding through the impact fees is sufficient for our development.
Option 5, what would happen is, the way our development is set up, following sort of the Envision Franklin and the ordinance, we have a ground level retail office to activate the street. So within those multifamily in your main corridor, if you limited the office retail, you sort of prevent that area from being activated. It's a small amount of square footage. Again, I think this sounds argumentative to say, and that's not really our goal to do that. I think we're just trying to think logically, how do we hit the proportional fair share here?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Mr. Girth.
Yes, if I can. And, you know, we do agree on one thing. This isn't adversarial. We're getting in front of you. A lot of respect for the folks here. But I do want to respectfully address 2 points. The improvements immediately in front of their development don't add capacity to the arterial road. Those are on them based on their proposed density. If they build less, they do less improvements. If they were requesting more density, they do more. The nexus that's created between our road impact fees that are paid by every development are based on the uses, and those fees, as you know, need to be used to add capacity to our arterial and collector roads. The 28%, they're paying the fees based on their density, and they're proportionate to the improvements we're talking about. But I wanted to be clear that the improvements in front of their development, if they don't build, they don't do them. If they build more, they likely have to make more improvements to turn lanes to get people in and out. If they do less, they do less. So, that's all. Oh, they are. But what I'm saying is that any development is required to do that. To us, it's analogous that they're building a hotel. They've got to make the improvements to get into the hotel. So it's part of the development package in the project. They're not extra.
Other questions from the board? All right.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Alderman Barnhill.
So what are you asking as your number one, or is it is the only one that you're really requesting of these options?
Option 2 is what we're requesting.
And I would just say one more thing, that, Matt, you brought this up too, that, there's going to be some of these parking lots that are going to go away. We have some development possibly coming in those parking lots, things moving out, maybe a parking garage in those areas. And so there may be additional monies coming in from some of those redevelopments. So we know that whole area over there along Cool Springs Boulevard with all those large parking lots, there's some redevelopment talk about that. So when they come in, we'll reap the money from that too, that maybe we can put towards our intersection as well. I just want to say that.
Go ahead, Alderman Barnhill.
What is your timetable for the build-out of your project? 5 years, 6, 7, 8?
Well, I mean, that probably depends on some of the outcome here, but I
Well-
mean, we would expect that
All right,
following.
then inject the best outcome here.
Yeah, probably about 2.5 years from.
To build out your project, hotels,
No, the hotel and the out parcels would be a different phase or timetable because we're only doing the multifamily.
so
Flournoy
what I'm saying is this, you're not gonna build out before we look at something through a capital improvements project list at some
That's
point
right.
in time, are we? I mean, the question here is, who does the project?
Yeah.
And I think probably, and I think I've said the same thing, I kind of lean towards the city managing the project. I think it's further away from theirs. They're managing their entrance. They've got their build out and the project to build out. If we can't get that road, if we can't get that improvement fixed ourselves in 5, 6, 7 years, which is before they have a tenant in their hotel, then I think that we probably need to revalue or relook at how fast or what we're doing as far as our capital improvements projects. And I've said before, we haven't reviewed those capital improvements projects since 2019, have we?
Well, we went back through the approved projects a couple times.
We
in the
went back
last
through
year
what
and a half.
we've improved.
Yeah.
But we have not gone back through
Right.
what was looked at.
Yeah.
To come up with that $300 or $400 million capital
Yeah.
improvements project list from 2019.
Well, as we shared with you, when we reviewed those, there's not a lot of additional capacity at this
Right.
stage.
But
And
but-
when you do your plan, it's a 10-year plan. It's not an immediate
But we have,
implementation.
well, I agree with that, but we have said, this project here is $2.4 million. We have said that we have $3.7 million in unallocated road impact fee funds. So it's basically not a funding issue.
Well, you're going to have other projects that will be eligible for those same impact fees. So this is
Then
where
we-
the
where are
prioritization,
they
as you
then?
know, going through
Where-
this
where-
come up. So it's,
Where are they? We deal with this one tonight, or we deal with whatever comes before us. If we do 2.4 out of 3.7, we only have 1.3 to deal with the next one that comes up. I mean, it's not a, it's
I'll
not,
call on you when
it's not
I'm
an
trying.
unsimple thing, but I am not totally comfortable with them doing the one in front of their project with the one that's a mile away and developing their project all at the same time. So that's what I'm looking at here.
Cameron, I'll give you a quick comment before we move on.
Yeah, I just wanted to say just one more thing. You know, I mean, we're excited. I know we've all demonstrated excitement about the other values that, you know, that we're bringing to the table here with this development, including, and including the public trail access, the placing of that greenway into an easement, making it fully public and connected. You know, we responded, we feel, to every request from preservation of the views of Roper's Knob by modifying our site plan to, you know, one of the other requests that we had, the transit that was requested, we drew those in, you know, to the site plan. I mean, we feel like from a partnership perspective, we've listened and responded to absolutely every request and accommodated absolutely every request. And this is the one, you know, thing that we've asked for consideration, you know, is to consider allowing that 28% impact fee, you know, plus that work at our intersection, you know, to satisfy that. And so we appreciate you very much and thank you for considering that.
Thank you. Item 9 is Resolution 2022-67, adopting a customer service policy for the City of Franklin utility customers.
I think Christine and Jessica are coming up. We had shared this at a Budget and Finance Committee meeting a month or so ago, and the direction was it might be helpful to share this with the whole board, just as an overview. These are some important policies that affect how we interact with our citizens, with our customers, and wanted to talk about that with you tonight. So, Jessica, Christine, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Good evening. So we did talk about this at Budget and Finance last month. But I do just want to share a brief overview of this policy. So we have many long-standing practices and informal policies in the Revenue Management Department when it comes to billing and collecting our utility customers. This policy formalizes those practices into a policy that we can refer to ensure that we're treating everyone fairly and being consistent in how we're applying our rules. And also gives guidance on what to do if the customer feels aggrieved or doesn't agree with, you know, a decision. We can refer them to this. There's even an appeal process set out in the policy, so it's really going to be helpful in a lot of different areas. And at Budget and Finance, I believe it was Alderman Potts asked how often were we planning on reviewing this and updating it, and I actually have two things to point out that we've already reviewed and will be updating before it's on the voting session next time. Number 16 talks about payment locations, and we have moved our drop box, and so we will update that. It's no longer on the 2nd Avenue median, so we'll get that changed before we vote on it. And then item 20 talks about the adjustments and there's different levels who can authorize certain levels of adjustments, and it refers to if it's $1,000 or more, the CFO can authorize that. And we want to also put in there that any of the ACAs or the city administrator can authorize that in Christine's absence. So we're going to make those two corrections before we put it on the voting session.
Thank you for noticing 16.
Well, I had some help. I had some fresh eyes looking at it and pointing out some things. So
The other thing, too, we can publish this. We'll publish this on our website, so it's a quick reference for customers if they have questions. So it just makes it totally transparent for folks in terms of how we handle some of the common questions, interactions, issues that come up.
Okey-doke. Item 10, City of Franklin Contract 2022-0282, an interlocal agreement between Bi-County Solid Waste Management System and City of Franklin for the transport and disposal of solid waste.
And really, items 10 and 11 go in
I'll read number
in tandem.
11.
Yeah, go ahead.
Item 11 has to do with this also, procurement award to Mr. Bultz, Inc., MBI of Burnham, Illinois, at the unit pricing of $1 per ton for the compaction services and $25.85 per ton for transport services to Bi-County landfill for the city's municipal solid waste stream processed by the city's solid waste transfer station for a term of award. That's enough. Okay. You got it.
So as we discussed on October 25th, we're looking to really achieve several goals in these two contracts. First of which is really predictable, long-term plans for our hauling and disposal. The disposal piece with Bi-County is about a 9.5-year initial term. And then there's an optional 5-year term in addition to that. The MBI contract, Mr. Bolts, is also a 10-year contract as well. And what it does is establishes pricing that's predictable. We can budget for it, establish our cost of service, and modify rates as we see necessary. As we know that many industries are fairly unstable nowadays. The solid waste industry, there's an uncertainty relative to landfill capacity here in Middle Tennessee. And we view that establishing longer-term contracts with respect to both of these contracts is really important for us to do now as the uncertainty continues to grow. So I'm happy to dig into specific pieces if you'd like, and take any questions.
Just one quick thing I would add. The Bi-County agreement provides us with 9.5 years plus of certainty around the landfill component with a 5-year option, mutually agreed to 5 years that we could add on to that. And the hauling and compaction is a 10-year window. So we've really essentially provided ourselves a decade of certainty around capacity and cost. Mark ran some numbers that were in the presentation 2 weeks ago that show that, and some pretty conservative estimates, to be at least a $3 to $6 million range of savings based on what we know today. I would say an educated guess tells me it's going to be significantly more than that, because I think that cost is going to continue to escalate even more than our assumptions. Just understanding the scarcity that may hit a really fast-growing region. So I think this is just smart in terms of locking in capacity and what I think will be significant savings and allow us to serve our community's growing needs as well.
And I'd like to add as well, and I apologize, I missed this when I was rambling earlier, but we would expect in about 6 to 7 years, the way we operate our transfer station now, that we would have to expand. One of the things that the compaction piece does for us is it, in effect, expands the capacity of that transfer station, which
without building anything.
Without building really anything. So that would offset a cost of, significant dollars in about 6 to 7 years. So that's another piece.
I'd like to just speak out and commend staff for the hard work on this. I'm involved with looking at this problem on a regional basis with many other mayors, and we're way ahead of the ball game with other cities. I remember one city that overnight learned that they had no place to take their solid waste. So kudos to the team, and it's been a hard negotiation, and it's an important negotiation for us to be able to set some of those numbers for our future budgets and understand where we're going. So thank you.
Just cover just a minute or two on the recyclables. You're carrying those to Lewisburg. What does it call? What's the tip fee on that?
The recyclables, we're going to come back to you all with a separate amendment to the Marshall County contract. While that was discussed at the October 25th meeting, that contract is a little bit behind these two contracts. So what we're looking at doing is, because the cost for Marshall County, I think the other customers are paying upwards of $50 a ton for their $60 a ton. Sorry, $60 a ton for recyclables. Our current contract is a $0 per ton tip fee. As you may recall, that we, during COVID, and then as the recycling industry has shifted, we did request from you all that you approved several amendments to provide for a $25 tip fee. We're going to request from you all to modify that to $30 a ton for the first year, and then do incremental increases, which is all part of that
It's a 10-year,
contract amendment.
it's a 10-year agreement as
Also a
well.
10-year agreement.
It will stair step up, and when we get closer to market, we will still remain 15% below their market rate. So we're still going to maintain a below market number with them, and a 10-year commitment in terms of capacity and processing.
Correct. And what Jack keeps keeps up with what tipping fees are in the region. In Nashville, we're looking at $65 plus per ton, so it's, cost has gone up.
One of the things we benefit from is we provide a dependable volume, and the quality of the recycling that comes from our community is really high. I mean, they're able to process it more efficiently, and it has less contamination in it, so it is a attractive product compared to some of what else they're dealing with. So we've kind of leveraged that, and the existing agreement and the existing position we're in has helped us get this 10-year arrangement.
Thanks, guys. Item 12 is Creekside property located at 370 Franklin Road is requested to be discussed by Alderman Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm sure most of you have saw the announcement, but I'll kind of give a little context first and then explain why I brought this to the work session today. So Creekside, for those that don't know, Creekside is a property that sits on both the east and west of Franklin Road, south of Mac Hatcher, inside the Mac Hatcher. That property was recently purchased by a group of private citizens, preservation partners, with the explicit goal of preserving this final rural gateway into our city. The group wishes for this property to be under easement, preservation easement, and they have zero intention of making a single penny on this purchase of this property. Their goal is to preserve, in fact, have even stated anything that they do above and beyond what they've put into this effort, they would return those dollars back into additional future preservation efforts. So just some context to sort of what we're sitting here with. The impetus to that purchase was a couple of attempts to develop this property over the last few years. And I think a strong belief, and I share this belief, that of all places that we don't need to see another multifamily complex going up is on this rural gateway, this final gateway into our city. And so the goal is to try to jump in here and to attempt to a public-private partnership towards the preservation of this critical area. I know there has been some discussion about specific parcels and specific pricing or cost or so forth, but I actually would really humbly suggest here for a second that we just kind of step back for a second, and this is the context of the discussion that I wanted to bring. Because this isn't really at this point in time, this isn't about a specific transaction and a specific piece of property. But if I was just to get you for a second, just to kind of step back here and think about the game changer here, think about the opportunity here. If you take this area of the property that the city already owns to the west of the church, the area behind the church, the racetrack, the connection to Harlansdale, the Creekside property, the views of Roper's Knob, coming down along Franklin Road past Harlansdale and into what is a vision for a factory district, there exists a huge opportunity for us to do something not only inspired, not only just fantastic here, but frankly, potentially something very iconic. You know, we've got a great historic downtown, but as we grow and as we expand and as we see change happening in our city, relying on only our historic downtown Main Street for economic vitality, for attraction, for values, for what we all seek when we come here, would be short-sighted. And I think if we were to sit back and 20 years from now look back and see this property full of development, I think we would all be pretty disappointed in that. But to look back 50 years from now and see this wonderful gateway and this great iconic drive into Franklin, I think we could all be proud of. I don't know yet what this property can be. I know in a week we've got a River Walk and Trails Committee meeting with Friends of Franklin Park, and we're going to brainstorm this. This quadrant was already on our list. We're going to put some effort into thinking about what could happen in this area. I've had conversations with Commissioner Greg Lawrence and the CEO of the U.S. Tennis Association. We need tennis courts. There's been some talk about, is there a way to satisfy some of that in this area? We've had conversations about, I've heard conversations about extending our equestrian capabilities within Harlansdale. I just say all that to say, who knows what could be here? But I think for the city to not be in this discussion, for us not to consider, for us not to step back for a second and have a little bit of vision about what's going on here, I think would be a mistake. We've been very growth focused as a city, rightfully so. Everybody's knocking on the door, everybody's coming. But we've been very growth focused. I think not since Harlansdale and Eastern Flank have we really preserved some serious property as a city. And there's probably not a lot that we really should think about. But this gateway, I think, hits the list. And, you know, I've had in my head a little bit Matthew 6:21 that says, where your treasures are, so will your heart be. And I think as a city, we really need to think about, we're talking about spending hundreds of millions of dollars on growth, infrastructure and roads and sewers and city halls. I think to make a small investment in protecting a very important gateway in our city, to preserve what attracts people to this city, to have a vision for this bigger area, I think would be crazy to not only take a role in that discussion, but maybe even a leadership role in that discussion. So the ask here today is very simple, to provide, hopefully this board, to provide some direction to the city, to think about how we might get into this conversation. What could be, not just the land use, but frankly, how we might fund it, where all the sources it could be that we could bring to bear to make this happen. I do truly believe, and I went back and looked at a lot of discussions that happened around those Creekside developments that were presented. I believe we've got a community out there that is growth fatigued. I think they'd like to know that there's at least some pieces of dirt that we won't put a building on. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to tell Franklin, we understand what makes us special. We understand why people are attracted here, and we're going to do what we can to save the road into it. And that would be my ask. And I hope there's enough folks here to want to support that effort, at least to explore where we can go. And Eric, to give you and the staff some direction on how to get engaged in this. I'll stop there.
Any other comments or questions? Alderman Hanson.
I too agree, Matt, with you that this is a gateway, and we've got to preserve the gateway, and there's another specific property that I feel should be included in that. I do feel there's a greater way to achieve that goal in a less costly manner through zoning, through changes to our Envision Franklin that are coming up next year, possibly, you know, language regarding those gateways so that we can preserve that future. If we need more trails, eminent domain is something that's available to a city if we need to extend our trail system. I love that property, but I also don't believe the city needs to be owning any historic homes in any respect. When did that property close? So it was purchased?
It is about.
It's under, I know it's under
Yeah,
contract, but it hasn't closed, okay. I love the idea of the preservation, and I think those four corners, one's already gone, but the other three have to be preserved forever for future generations, so we don't go, ooh, who did that on that corner? I do agree, but I think there's much less costly ways. I don't think Parkland is part of the equation on this, even though we do have dedicated funds for Quadrant 1. I'm just hesitant to spend our money on it. We have such big hearts in Franklin, such generous people. I know there's probably plenty of people who would like to put together their own money to maybe gift it to the community, dedicate it to individuals or organizations that are important to them, similar to what we did with the park with little LEG's name on it. I think that's a great opportunity for people to invest their money and give it back to the city as a commemorative future and legacy, but I can't spend our money on it. That's just my opinion.
Alderman Baggett.
So, again, applaud the efforts of the private citizens, and this is something, frankly, it reminds me of, though I wasn't here and I'm not involved with battlefield preservation, you know, 20 years ago, some people sat probably around here and said, hey, we want to tear down perfectly good buildings and pay top dollar for it, and we want to make it a park. And it was pretty revolutionary. It made National Geographic, the national news. We were doing something special, and those that are involved with this here were part of that. So this is very innovative, and I would also agree with Alderman Hanson in that an unexpected $6 million, I just threw that number out. It could be 4, it could 3, 2, whatever the number is. $1. An unexpected capital expense is a little bit shocking. But I think the bigger picture here, and I think Matt alluded to this, is that there is a broader area. There's 3 property owners. There's the church, the city, and now Franklin Preservation Partners. In Harlansdale, obviously, we're adjacent. So we've got 3 people, three groups, 2 of which I think probably have very similar goals, the Preservation Partners in the city, and the church, who I think is very willing to engage. And we just ask that the city go forward with, going out for an RFP or request for uses for our 54 acres that we don't know what to do with over there, the floodplain, that we're going to do Top Golf and all that. It's like we're going we're going shopping, but we don't really know what we need over there, right? And so we've got we have this opportunity. It's a puzzle, and I think that there are opportunities to reduce the cost to the city. There's probably land that the city actually would like to have adjacent to Harlansdale. There's probably parcels. There's land out of the floodplain on the 54 acres that we have on the other side that it has some economic value. And then it becomes, do we want, what land is the most useful for the city? So I think there's a complex puzzle here, and I think it actually ends up with it not being that much out of pocket for the city. And in fact, it could be, there could be a real deal here for the city. So the other thing, second thing, battlefield preservation. We have a private nonprofit that takes out private financing over a long period of time, and the city dedicates funds out of our hotel motel tax over a period of time, 7 years on the last project, and the city paid, basically the nonprofit went out and took the risk, took the loan, and then the city paid them back over time. So it wasn't this big lump sum to the city to go buy these battlefields. So Friends of Franklin Park certainly would be a great, and I'm not speaking for Tory nor their board, but I think they have the heart of the organization that might facilitate that. My guidance would be there's something here that is not just necessarily stroking a check for a piece of land, because you got some interested parties here that really, the church is interested in some of that land, and there's a deal here. And then you go looked into a grant. We got grant people that are helping us with Battlefield that found another grant for open space for just this kind of thing. So I don't know if that's a commission, if it's an ad hoc committee that the mayor puts together or that the city leads that comes up and brainstorms these ideas instead of just it's X amount of dollars for that corner. How do we achieve a bigger goal? And so that would be my feedback and I think that's what the spirit of your comments are.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Alderman Barnhill.
Since we have discovered tonight that the city has bottomless pockets, I want to put in my request. There's been a bulldozer sitting down here on First Avenue and Bridge Street for years now, and 2 old buildings that totally distract the worst-looking intersection, the worst-looking 2 or 3 buildings in Franklin. Somehow or other, include that in the preservation here, and we'll do that. But look at that. But I don't know. We did a lot of talking about where the budget's coming from, how it's coming from. We probably had that same conversation when you did Harlansdale. It's hotel motel tax that will come and help pay for this right here if we decide to buy it. I don't know what the price is. It may be out of line. I know they give $8 million for 200 acres of Harlansdale, and you're giving $6 for 50 or 60, whatever it is out there. So and I understand it's gone up, but look at that. I think that's, and I'm not a big, and I don't misunderstand, I'm not a big preservationist person. I've lived here all my life. I've seen the city go from 20,000 in 90 to 40,000 in 2000 to 60,000 in 2010 to 85,000 now. So what I remember about Franklin is not where it is at 85,000. I remember when it was 20,000. And the bulldozer was there then, I think.
Same bulldozer.
Same bulldozer. The flood didn't move it. But you need to come back with guidance as to where the money comes from and how it's generated, what we have as far as our parkland dedication fees, hotel motel tax, those sort of things. I will support the purchase somewhere or another of this piece of property. I think it's important to the city, and I think the surrounding property, it protects the surrounding properties that we've discussed also, so.
If I might just say a quick word, you know, I've been in a number of meetings about this property, and, you know, I've met with staff about it, and also some of the partners, the preservation partners. And I certainly embrace the eagerness to protect that gateway. I would say we have no concrete proposal from the preservation partners at this point, and I think the starting point would be, you know, they're going to be the landowners. What is their thought process on it for what they're wanting to do with the property that fits into their plan and their financial scheme? And then I think we have to look at that and look at our parkland master plan and see how it fits in and see how it fits our trail system, and then find out how we reach some point and is the money there. So, and I'm sure staff will be eager to engage. And so we need to move on if it's okay.
Well, and I think the question tonight is there enough interest for us to dedicate and put a lot of staff time into doing that thinking and looking at that? You know, we don't want to go down that road if that's not what you want us to do. And I think that's where Alderman Brown's inquiry originally started. And so that's what I'm looking to hear, is that you're good with us doing some of this work, just like the mayor described, just like some of the other comments have referenced how this fits in with some of the other planning we're doing, and just engaging further in it. Because it's gonna be a commitment of time and energy, and, you know, well worth it. But before we go down that road, want to get your buy-in that we're doing it.
Alderman Potts has had laryngitis, I think, hadn't said a word tonight, so I'm going to recognize him, and the vice mayor has not said anything, and then I'll go to Alderman Berger after that, so.
Good news, Dr. Mayor.
Your voice has come back.
I'll be very brief, recognizing our time. I am in support of this. I want to compliment everybody that's involved. This is the visionary scope that we do need right now. We're looking at making significant planning for across multiple wards, and I think this is a great opportunity for us to look back 15, 20, 50 years from now. So, Eric, I definitely want to move forward.
I think that kudos to the preservation partners for stepping out and claiming something before it gets built upon. I will have to say, in the 11 years I've been here, the gateway has changed so many times of where it starts. I remember Ernie Bacon saying the benchmark to the gateway of Franklin was Moore's Lane. And then Margaret and I got in a debate about the benchmark being by Sonic. So the benchmark, or the gateway, is, there are many gateways into Franklin, but of course this is one that is prominent. I think that much like anything we do when we talk about envisioning things, we have to be careful that other projects that have been on a list that have been waiting to be funded are not thwarted for something. And I have a feeling you rescued it so that it would not be developed, and the clock, I don't know where that clock times out. But we have to be good stewards of our communities, things they've told us they want. We make these lists and we try to fund them responsibly So I think that there's room for everything, but we've got to be careful about how we balance what the needs and wants are. Then you go backwards and you look at the foresight of gathering Harlansdale into the fray for it to be open space. You look at even the Southeast Park land that was bought so many years ago, probably with not a lot of intent of what it would be today. But we have to have those long-range goals, and we have to have that vision of how we want our town to be perceived and enjoyed. So I think the due diligence is probably very well worth it.
Alderman Berger.
All right, real quick. There's a lot of good things here and a lot of really questions. And I would say that we have had, we have a $100 million water treatment plant. We have a new treatment plant we have to put in the southeast. We have a new city hall. And by the way, at the announcement the other day, someone who's in this room came up to me and said, we don't need a new city hall, we need this land. We don't need city hall, we need this land, much more important. Totally disagree with that. You tell that to the people who get ill being under mold and computers with rain on it every day, and a roof that's caving in, and all these other things. So I couldn't support other things that are really detrimental to some need here on City Hall. And also, our major thing that the government is responsible is for the health, safety, and welfare of the people, and that includes sewer. That includes sewer and water. Police, fire, those things are our jurisdiction. Those are our, we do so many things that are not really under our jurisdiction, but we do it. But we have to understand what are our top priorities too. I'm saying all this, don't get me wrong, I'm not speaking against this. I'm just being the devil's advocate in some ways because I think we have to be open and honest about a lot of different things. Am I willing to take this big parcel off our tax rolls? Pretty tough thing to do. It's a big piece of property to take off our tax rolls. Do we want to do a public-private partnership, citizen funding, raising $6 million to save our theater in a downturn in 2008 was incredible. I think it was even more than $6 million. So maybe the citizens, maybe the parks, in the public-private partnership we have, maybe the citizens who give so freely and wonderful in this city could do that for this property. And do we want two parks right across from the street from each other? Of course, made some good points that we could, coordinate them and have them meet, and that might be a good thing too. Or maybe there is an agri-development there, or we have 1 per 5 acres, and people put homes on there with horses that they can ride around there, and they can ride across the street into our parks. That might be another thing when you can have a lot of open space and land. But then the public doesn't get to enjoy that part. Public-private partnerships, citizens funding, raising the money, grants, hotel motel tax. Well, we pretty well bleed that dry until we know the visitors don't come here if we up that too much. Then who's going to be the landowners? Mayor said something about they are going to be the landowners. Well, not if we purchase it. We have one park on the east side, that's Liberty. We're going to be putting some money into that. But Moore's Lane to 96, there's one park. But we are going to be improving Liberty Park, but we're missing a very, very important piece of Liberty Park. It's on the corner of Oxford Glen and McEwen. It's owned by a gentleman who has a few acres there, and if we had that parcel, we could extend our Liberty Park and make it complete and open it up so people can get down to a multimodal path that's going to be along our new 4-lane McEwen that takes us all the way to Clovercroft School, takes us all the way to Wilson Pike, and takes us all the way to Smith Park in Brentwood. That is really important to me, and it's really important to my constituents, really important to the people that live on the east side. But yet, this board has never discussed it. I've asked about it, but we've never put it on our CIP. It's time to probably do that. It's a great gateway into our Liberty Park and everything, and that's a park, to me, I think is really worth saving and extending there. And it's not a huge parcel, but it probably could be a few $1 million. So there's all these things to think about, and I just wanted to lay them out and just say, let's talk about those. Some of them are a little hard to talk about. Some of them are like, oh, is that negative? Is she being negative? Does she not want this? Is she anti-preservation? Absolutely not. but we have a lot to discuss. I'm willing to take a look at it, and I think we ought to put our thinking caps on. We ought to go, go after grants. Do we really want to own it as a city, or should somebody else own it? Should the parks? I don't know. There's a lot of ifs, but I just want to throw all that out there and just be pretty transparent about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Go ahead, Alderman Barnhill.
I'm glad I got my bulldozer removal in first.
We're taking notes on that bulldozer.
Thank you.
Item 13 is Resolution 2022-73 is a resolution of support for state legislation to create a tax classification bracket for certain commercial and residential historic properties. I think it's my understanding that the county is going to be considering that, but they're going to move it to another meeting because they're still studying this particular thing. You're welcome to make comments about it, Alderman Baggett.
Yeah, there was, so as you know, may or may not know, but we did a revaluation of property last year, and we saw downtown, specifically the heart of what this is about our Main Street and some of the adverse effects of the wonderful things happening in Franklin, like our property values going up. And we're seeing 200 to 300% increase in property taxes owed by our Main Street building owners. And you think, well, their buildings have gone up. That's great. Well, a lot of these building owners have owned it for generations. Maybe they paid $100,000 for it back in whenever. It's been, and what happens is that those taxes get passed on to the tenants. And so you have your Main Street tenants, which frankly, yeah, Matt, basically. But this is not for Matt. I had to make sure Matt has nothing to do with this. I mean, yeah, but don't distract me, Matt.
I understand.
But we have a real issue, and here's the big picture is that what brings people to Franklin is love Cool Springs, but the tourists don't come for Cool Springs. They come for the character of our downtown, which is primarily traditionally been made up of local merchants that you can't find at the mall, can't find in any other city in America. It's here. And what has happened with the 200 to 300% increase in property taxes, and got some examples where it's $40,000 and $50,000 a year being passed on to tenants who, as you know, if you know our retail and the goods and wares that they sell, that's a lot of those goods and wares that they sell to make up that difference. And so this resolution is not a specific solution. This is our support for that will be sent to our state delegation so that they can go next session and propose some sort of legislation that takes a stab at this and would make this historic tax relief across the state available across the state. And we're a real example of what historic or investment in historic downtown can do to a city. We have these problems today because this board of mayor and aldermen and others invested in streetscape, invested in all the things that made this downtown attractive, and we're reaping the benefits and the challenges of that now. And so a lot of uses across the state for this. But what we want to do, what this is here to do, is to just vocalize our support for that. It does not really do anything other than vocalizing the support should the county proceed with this, and the county would have control for the opt-in should the state do something legislatively. I think, to the mayor's point, if we'd like to just pause until they further investigate this at the county, obviously we want to follow their lead and be in sync with what they desire to do. But the Budget and Finance Committee, I think for the county, looked at it last night, and I'm not certain of the new schedule for this, but that's the gist.
We had a little discussion earlier today with Diane Giddens from the county, and it sounds like may not be dealt with at the county commission level till January, which, quite frankly, if you want to get it into this legislative cycle, you can't go past January because they're filing limits and deadlines, et cetera, to work with. And I think one of the issues they're struggling with that you may want to weigh in on, and you don't really need to wait for them on this, is do you really want to focus this only on the commercial aspect? And I think that's what they're looking at, commercial versus there's residentials mentioned as well. It seems like the primary push has been about the commercial impact and how that affects economic vitality, unique local retail, those elements. That may be something for you all to think about. We don't need to decide that tonight, and we can spend some time and maybe even bring it back in December for some discussion, and you all can weigh in. I had a call too last week from one of the county commissioners wanting to know what we were going to do about it, and I said, well, Alderman Baggett's asked for it on this work session, so that kind of started
And I
that
would
ball.
say,
too.
I think we press, let's just follow the county's lead on this, whether that they do commercial and residential, because bottom line is, they get to make that decision anyway, right? I mean, we don't have any control over property tax levy on commercial versus residential. We could vocalize our support one way or the
Yeah.
other.
I think if you think something is more important, this is an opportunity to weigh in on it.
Okay.
And not, that may just be something you want to do, and maybe we can even do that more informally than a
Yeah.
board action too. It's just something I think you may want to weigh in on.
I'd also ask the staff to look at other approaches we do have control over. I don't know if that's in zoning, in Vision Franklin. I don't know what we can do to encourage merchants. What's happening, and we got a lot more to go on this
Yeah.
agenda, but is you're getting financial institutions, you're getting those that can afford that rent are going into our first floors. Certain uses that people don't travel to Franklin to walk into a financial planning office on Main Street, so I don't know if there are any
No,
other
you don't.
aspects that we could do zoning wise.
Alderman Berger.
Yeah, I think we should weigh in on this and not wait. I mean, that doesn't hurt. I think we should weigh in on this, because do we want to see the national chains all up and down our Main Street? It kills the ambiance of our downtown. And if we do that, if we don't step up to the plate and voice our opinion, it's not, as you said, it's going to be in the county's hands, but I think we should voice our opinion, and we should move this ahead and vote on that we would support this or not. I certainly would support this, and it should be only the commercial in the downtown historic section, because we have to do something, and it's not just about Franklin. There are historic downtowns all through, multiple ones in Tennessee we're not alone. They're having the same problem. So this is going to be something, and they need to be talking about it in January right away. We don't need to delay it. So I think if we stepped to the plate and said, yes, county, we're supportive of this, I think they would like to hear from us. And I've talked to Greg Lawrence about that. He's my county commissioner, and he certainly supports that.
Alderman Potts.
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. Alderman Baggett, we need to move this quickly. There's concern as we continue to grow economically, national chains are going to come in. And this is a great way for us to preserve all of those great things that attract people to Franklin. So, yes, and if there needs to be additional amendments or anything to this to move it forward, then I'll definitely be part of that conversation.
Okay, item number 14 is presentation on the proposed water and sewer impact fees. We don't have time to get to that. I would,
Mayor, we have a lot of folks here who have come from the Clearview Baptist Church specifically for those fees.
let me finish speaking, please. And I'm a little bit blindsided by Alderman Hanson's request to postpone it or have a special meeting, and certainly we're glad to have a special meeting if if the board needs additional information. Likewise, I have another alderman that's wanting to proceed and have the presentation since there are a number of people here. And so in respect to the other 7 aldermen who have not requested that it be removed, I need some direction on what you want to do.
Mr. Mayor, I mentioned that to you before the meeting tonight, that I would be bringing that up, because I think we need to take that off the agenda. This is so important. This does not need to be on a work session. We need our own meeting talking about this. We need stakeholders in the room. So many people that are just becoming aware of this, that it really affects. And I know Clearview Baptist, that their development is dead in the water if this goes through for them right now. And they're not the only ones. We've heard from many of the developers who are ready to go and have all their financing and everything, and it's like, put the brakes on, and it affects a lot of people in this city. this deserves its own meeting. It does not need to be a work session, and I totally support your idea of taking it totally off here. I'm glad it's 7 o'clock because we don't have time to discuss it. And I really want our own work session, and I would like to invite the stakeholders to sit in this room when we have our meeting and to hear from them as well, because I think there's a lot of heads are better than a few, and they can come up with some ideas. There are a lot of different things, and we need to talk about where we are with the state. What are the tools that we could use as well? So anyway, that was my opinion.
Alderman Brown.
I agree. There's a lot of questions on this. I'm actually looking forward to tomorrow morning's Development Services meeting. I know we're going to put this in front of that team. I'm anxious to hear that feedback. I don't think we have an answer in anything I've seen yet. I don't think we're there. I will say this development is at risk. I think we're going to lose this development if we can't make a decision soon. If that means I need to do a resolution to preclude them from this whole thing, then I'll do that. But if further delay of this for that development in particular means that development probably goes away, because they've got to make some decisions now, and I get that. And so I don't think we want to lose the development. So I'll take some guidance after this on how we handle them. But I think to keep pushing them along while we figure this out, and I don't think this is going to be a one meeting and we figured it out. I think this is going to take some discussion. So at least for where they are looking for, that's weird. They need to move, and so we can talk afterwards. But if I need to bring something to move them forward, then I'll do that. But I don't think we should have them waiting for this.
Well, then I have to bring 2 or 3 myself, because it's not just.
I would
Ward
suggest
2.
you not go there as a precedent. We can
Absolutely.
certainly talk further, but, and there's some options we're giving you on how to phase this in that may help with that as well. So.
I've got the vice mayor.
I apologize, y'all sat here through the whole meeting, but you've gotten to know us a little better and our policies and procedures, the way we do a meeting. But I do think you deserve to have a longer discussion than us trying to piece it in the next 10, 15, or 30 minutes. So I apologize you came tonight, but I think we will see you again really soon.
Alderman Potts.
There we go. Thank you, sir. I wanted similar words here. Thank you, everybody, thank you for everyone that's in the audience tonight. And sorry that our time has expired here as far as this work session. I have shared and received several emails with lots of questions, and whenever I receive those, I always try to direct them to the appropriate department leaders. And so I've asked the department leaders to get those answers. So my ask is, as we move forward, sir, is that those questions that were submitted, if we can have a FAQ document to address those, then all of you that are here, if we have that in advance of that meeting, then hopefully if there's some follow-up questions that need to be addressed, we can have those addressed. But thank you for submitting those questions to us. And I do look forward to moving this to another session, and agree this is going to take us some time. I would be hesitant to pull 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 projects out. We just need to address this.
Alderman Daggett.
Thank you for letting us discuss this too, Mayor. Appreciate that. I know the church members appreciate that too. I'm just going to be frank. Sometimes I can do that, but I think not only from the church, but we're hearing it from all sides, that this is going to be a really complex, and we've got some more work to do. And whether that's looking at what these fees, the figure the fees are backing into, whether that's looking at a timeline. And we get an email from like 30 to people in the commercial development community today with their concerns. I think it would be wise for us, for everyone, to have a smoother process, to step back and maybe kind of come at this a different way, because or else we're going to be doing piecemeal, kind of it's going to be a string of meetings, and I think we need to step back. And maybe that stepping back allows some projects who are currently underway to continue on. But this is the reason this is happening is what I've been saying, which is that this is going to stop development. And so if this isn't evidence with, you have these people here, fine folks, because their church can't sell their property now because the developers are going to hightail it out because this is too much. If this is not evidence of what I've been saying, just wait for the 40 other people to show up. And so that doesn't mean we don't need these fees, right? I mean, I'm not saying that, right? I want you to hear me. I'm not saying we don't need these fees. I just think that there's probably another equation, and we need to take the time to figure that out together. And if there's more to the story, we need to hear the story.
Go ahead, Alderman Brown.
Just the final comment, which you're absolutely right. One implication is we lose development, but the second implication is that the costs go up so much that we end up getting brought a bunch of developments that we don't really want in our city because of the cost to do them. And I think we're just going to see nothing but a bunch of boxes and multifamily if the fees are too high. And so I think that's why we step back, because I still think there's a desire here on this board to have a vision for what we want in our city, but we're going to inadvertently force the same old, and stuff that we don't want if we're not careful. That's all. Thank you.
See you in a few minutes.